For decades, the partnership of Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire has been celebrated as the golden standard of Hollywood elegance, a duo so perfectly synchronized that their dances felt less like choreography and more like magic. They glided across the screen with effortless grace, creating a legacy that shaped generations of performers. But behind the dazzling footwork, the glowing smiles, and the flawless routines, a much more complicated story was unfolding, one Ginger Rogers never fully shared during her lifetime. Until now. In a newly resurfaced interview, long buried in the archives of a forgotten studio vault, Ginger Rogers finally reveals the emotional truth about her relationship with Fred Astaire. And what she says is far more surprising, heartfelt, and honest than the polished headlines of their era ever allowed. The world has always seen them as perfect partners, but Ginger's voice cracks with sincerity as she describes the exhausting rehearsals, the unspoken pressure, and the delicate balance between admiration and frustration. She admits that she often felt overshadowed, not intentionally, but inevitably by Astaire's towering reputation. And yet, she also shares moments of deep respect, unexpected vulnerability, and a private bond the public never saw. The interview's release has already sent shockwaves through Hollywood historians and classic film fans alike. It challenges long-held assumptions, sheds new light on one of cinema's greatest partnerships, and paints a more human picture of two legends whose lives were far more nuanced than the glamorous world they danced through. Now, for the first time, Ginger Rogers' authentic voice is being heard, revealing the truth she carried quietly for decades. A truth that is emotional, complex, and utterly impossible to forget. For nearly a century, Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire have been immortalized as the ultimate Hollywood duo. Their dances, perfectly synchronized and impossibly graceful, seem to float above reality. Posters, magazines, and silver screen reels painted a flawless picture, two icons, inseparable on stage, effortlessly perfect, eternally harmonious. But as decades passed, fans only ever glimpsed one side of the story, the public side. Behind the cameras, the rehearsals, and the smiling publicity shots, there existed a world of unspoken emotions, private frustrations, and an intensity that few outside their inner circle could ever comprehend. Ginger Rogers had always been the quieter of the two. She was admired, adored, and beloved, but the world often remembered her as the woman who danced with Fred Astaire, rather than a legend in her own right. She carried herself with grace, charm, and professionalism, never revealing the exhaustion and pressure that came with performing alongside someone whose brilliance was as blinding as Astaire's. Every step, every turn, every leap demanded precision, not just for her, but for the illusion of perfection the audience expected. And Ginger delivered, night after night, rehearsal after rehearsal, until the magic appeared effortless. Yet, in this newly resurfaced interview, Ginger finally speaks candidly about those years, the tension, the admiration, the fear, and the unspoken sacrifices. She recalls the long hours in dimly lit studios, dancing until blisters formed on her feet, her muscles aching, yet never showing fatigue. She speaks of moments when Fred's genius intimidated her, when she questioned whether she could ever match the precision and fluidity that seemed to come to him naturally. And she admits, with a voice both tender and resolute, that the weight of living up to the image of Fred's perfect partner often felt isolating. But it wasn't resentment. Not exactly. Ginger's words reveal a complex mix of respect, friendship, and quiet awe. She speaks of Astaire's unwavering dedication to his craft, the relentless rehearsal schedules he demanded, and the subtle ways he pushed her to elevate her own performances. At times, she says, it felt like walking a tightrope, balancing admiration for his talent with the desire to assert her own. Every performance was a negotiation between brilliance and collaboration, individuality and unity. And yet, despite the challenges, there were moments of intimacy and understanding that existed only between them. Ginger recalls evenings after filming, when the cameras were off and the world had stopped watching, when laughter and shared stories reminded her that Fred Astaire was more than an icon. He was human. These glimpses of vulnerability, rarely captured in photographs or written accounts, hint at a profound connection beneath the glitz, one that audiences would never have guessed. What makes this revelation so compelling is not the glamour of Hollywood or the awe-inspiring talent they shared. It is Ginger's voice, honest, reflective, and deeply human. For decades, the world assumed she had nothing left to say about Astaire, that she had retired into silence, content with the legacy already established. But this interview proves otherwise. Ginger Rogers' words remind us that behind every legendary partnership lies a story untold, one filled with sacrifice, determination, vulnerability, and ultimately, a bond that transcends fame. In the chapters that follow, the interview unravels even more secrets, the moments of tension that tested their collaboration, the private admiration that fueled their artistry, and the truths Ginger kept hidden until now. Because for the first time in decades, Ginger Rogers is speaking, and the world is finally listening. The newly resurfaced interview revealed more than just reflections on the glamour and artistry of Hollywood. Ginger Rogers' words painted a picture of a partnership that was far more complex than anyone had imagined, a delicate balance between collaboration, admiration, and quiet competition. She began by recalling the early days of working with Fred Astaire. Hollywood was different then, but the pressure to succeed was relentless. Every dance number had to be perfect, every routine flawlessly timed. There was no room for error, no margin for missteps. Ginger spoke candidly about the long hours in rehearsal studios, often starting before sunrise and continuing late into the night, her muscles aching and her patience tested, while Astaire, seemingly tireless, pushed forward with precise, methodical energy. Fred was extraordinary, she said, her voice tinged with reverence. He expected perfection, but he also demanded that you give yourself completely, body, mind, and soul. There were days I felt like I could never measure up, but somehow, we always found a way to make it work. It wasn't just about talent or physical ability. Ginger revealed the mental and emotional toll of performing with someone whose brilliance was almost blinding. She admitted that, at times, she questioned herself, her skills, her instincts, even her own worth as an artist. Being Fred Astaire's partner meant existing in the shadow of a legend, yet simultaneously sharing the spotlight. It was a dance in more ways than one, not just on stage, but in navigating ego, pride, and mutual respect. Yet Ginger never painted the picture as one of resentment. On the contrary, she emphasized the deep admiration she held for Astaire. Behind the challenges, behind the exhaustion, there were moments of sheer magic. The times when their movements aligned so perfectly, it felt almost supernatural. She described evenings when the cameras stopped rolling and they would sit together, laughing over missteps, sharing anecdotes from their childhoods, or quietly discussing the nuances of a routine until it felt just right. He could be intimidating, Ginger admitted, but he was also incredibly kind. And there were moments of humor and warmth that no audience ever saw. Those moments kept me going. She also revealed another layer of their collaboration that rarely reached the public eye: the quiet negotiation of credit and recognition. Hollywood loved to celebrate Astaire's talent, often overlooking the equally important contributions Ginger made to each performance. She recalled times when she had to assert herself delicately, ensuring her input was recognized without disrupting the rhythm of their partnership. It wasn't about ego, she explained. It was about making sure our work remained authentic, that every step, every twirl, every lift had meaning. I wanted to honor the artistry we created together, but also honor myself. Throughout the interview, Ginger's words conveyed a rare honesty. She did not glorify the hardships, but she did not shy away from them either. She spoke of blisters, bruises, and exhaustion, yes, but also of laughter, camaraderie, and a bond forged through shared passion. It became clear that their legendary performances were built not only on talent, but also on resilience, patience, and unspoken trust. By the time the second tape concluded, it was evident why Ginger Rogers' silence had lasted so long. The memories were raw, personal, and infinitely nuanced. Speaking publicly about Fred Astaire was not simply a matter of reminiscing about glamorous routines. It meant revisiting the most intense, vulnerable, and formative moments of her career. And yet, she had chosen to speak now, to tell the world the truth behind the glittering image, behind the music and the choreography, to share not just the story of a perfect dance partnership, but the story of a woman who endured, adapted, and thrived alongside one of Hollywood's greatest legends. This chapter of the interview would set the stage for even more revelations, moments of tension, vulnerability, and quiet humanity that audiences never imagined existed. Because while Fred Astaire's brilliance was undeniable, Ginger Rogers' voice revealed that the real magic had always been in their shared journey, a journey filled with complexity, passion, and heart. As the interview progressed, Ginger Rogers began to peel back layers of her partnership with Fred Astaire that fans and historians had long speculated about, but never truly understood. She revealed that while their dances seemed effortless on screen, the reality behind the scenes was far more complicated, a mix of intense dedication, occasional friction, and subtle negotiations of ego and artistry. Ginger described the rigorous rehearsal schedules in meticulous detail. Each sequence had to be flawless, requiring perfect timing, precise footwork, and seamless synchronization. Mistakes were not merely frowned upon, they were opportunities for relentless refinement. Fred Astaire, in his pursuit of perfection, would push repeatedly, sometimes to the point of exhaustion. Ginger recalled evenings when, after hours of repetition, she would collapse backstage, only to hear Astaire softly remark, "Again, Ginger. We can make it better." Those words, she said, were both inspiring and exhausting, a reminder of the immense standards she had to meet, and the relentless drive that defined him. Yet despite the tension, Ginger emphasized that friction did not equal discord. It was never personal, she explained. Fred was exacting because he wanted the performance to be perfect, and that exacting nature made me better, stronger, sharper, more aware of every detail. She recounted times when disagreements arose over choreography or interpretation, but these moments were resolved with mutual respect and a shared desire to elevate the art. What the audience saw as effortless grace was actually a product of countless debates, corrections, and refinements behind the camera. Beyond the technical rigor, Ginger also revealed the emotional layers of their relationship. She spoke candidly about the occasional insecurities she experienced, moments when she felt overshadowed by Fred's brilliance, or when the world's adoration seemed skewed heavily in his favor. But she clarified that admiration and rivalry coexisted, forming a delicate balance that propelled both of them forward. "I wanted to shine, yes, but I also wanted us to shine together," she said. That tension made our work alive, not mechanical. The interview also explored the lighter, more personal moments that the public rarely glimpsed. Ginger recalled evenings when the two would laugh uncontrollably over a misstep, or share quiet conversations about life off stage. She admitted that these fleeting glimpses of humanity strengthened their connection, and reminded her that, beyond the fame and the performances, Fred Astaire was a man of humor, warmth, and kindness. One particularly poignant story involved a rehearsal for one of their most famous routines. Ginger described a moment when exhaustion and frustration threatened to overwhelm her. Fred noticed, paused, and simply said, "You've got this, Ginger. Trust yourself." That brief exchange, she explained, exemplified the quiet support that underpinned their legendary partnership, a support invisible to the camera, but essential to the magic audiences admired. By sharing these moments, Ginger painted a portrait not just of a dance legend, but of a partnership built on respect, trust, and shared artistry. She challenged the perception that their work was simply about talent. Instead, it was about resilience, patience, and an unspoken commitment to each other's excellence. As the chapter concluded, it became clear that Ginger Rogers' revelations were reshaping the way the world understood her collaboration with Fred Astaire. The dazzling routines, the seamless performances, the iconic glamour, these were now contextualized within a narrative of hard work, emotional complexity, and personal growth. Ginger's voice reminded the world that behind the magic of the silver screen was a story of determination, compromise, and unwavering dedication, the real dance that no audience ever truly saw. And yet, there was still one final layer to uncover, moments of vulnerability and unspoken emotion that Ginger had kept hidden for decades. moments that would finally reveal the human side of an icon. As the interview continued, Ginger Rogers moved beyond choreography and rehearsals, revealing the parts of her partnership with Fred Astaire that were never meant for public consumption. This was the layer of vulnerability, the human dimension, the moments when the glitz and glamour of Hollywood gave way to emotion, exhaustion, and unfiltered honesty. She began by reflecting on the intense scrutiny that came with their fame. Every performance, every smile, every twirl was under the microscope. Critics would praise Astaire for his elegance and precision, but Ginger admitted that the public often overlooked her own contributions. People loved the duo, but somehow the narrative was always about him, she said quietly. I learned to accept it, to find pride in my work, but it wasn't easy. I wanted to be recognized as more than the woman who danced with Fred Astaire. Yet for all the challenges, she acknowledged the profound impact Fred had on her growth as an artist. She recounted rehearsals where he pushed her beyond what she thought possible, refining every move, adjusting every detail, challenging her to find nuance and expression even in the smallest gestures. There were moments of frustration, she admitted, when the pressure felt unbearable. But there were also moments of triumph, the first time a routine came together seamlessly, the thrill of executing a sequence perfectly, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing their collaboration was extraordinary. Beyond the stage, Ginger revealed glimpses of Fred's personality that few had ever witnessed. He was disciplined, meticulous, and demanding, but he also possessed a gentle sense of humor and a keen sense of empathy. She described quiet evenings, after long days of filming, when they would share personal stories, joke about minor mishaps on set, or simply sit in silence, exhausted but content. He had a warmth to him that the cameras never captured, Ginger said. And in those moments, I saw a side of him that was human, funny, and deeply caring. One story stood out. During a particularly grueling routine, Ginger had stumbled and almost ruined a sequence. Fred, instead of expressing frustration, had offered her a hand and whispered, "We'll get it, together." That small gesture, she recalled, encapsulated the essence of their partnership: mutual respect, unwavering support, and a shared commitment to their art. Ginger also touched on the emotional resilience required to navigate Hollywood's pressures. She spoke candidly about loneliness, self-doubt, and the quiet moments when she questioned whether she could continue. Yet it was her partnership with Fred, she said, that sustained her. We leaned on each other more than anyone knew, she admitted. It wasn't just about the dance. It was about surviving, thriving, and creating something lasting, together. Finally, Ginger reflected on the enduring legacy of their work. The performances captured on film were not simply displays of talent. They were testaments to years of discipline, collaboration, and shared vision. Audiences saw the perfection, the effortless grace, the sparkle of chemistry. But behind the scenes, there had been compromise, conversation, and countless quiet moments of mutual encouragement that made the magic possible. As the chapter closed, it became evident that Ginger Rogers' revelations offered more than nostalgia. They redefined the world's understanding of one of cinema's greatest partnerships, shedding light on the emotional and human elements that made their collaboration extraordinary. The audience had witnessed elegance on the silver screen, but now they were discovering courage, vulnerability, and the extraordinary depth of two people who had given everything to their craft and to each other. For Ginger Rogers, breaking her long silence was not just about telling stories. It was about reclaiming her voice, honoring her experiences, and revealing the heart behind the legend. And even as the interview concluded, the impact of her words continued to ripple, reminding the world that the brilliance of a legend is always intertwined with the humanity behind it.